The Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan, and DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use our promo code LASTDigital, and then you can spin up your own Linux rig for free. Welcome to the Linux Action Show, episode 355. My name is Chris.
And my name is Noah.
Hey, Noah. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So guess what? Huge show today. Big show. I know. You're surprised. You're shocked. You never could have believed it. But today we're going to talk about media production under Linux. Have you ever wondered how Noah goes to the floor of Scale and all the other conferences and we stream live all under Linux? Well, we're going to talk about that and how you can produce your own show, some of the hardware, software tips and tricks that we use, and a few other folks out there that do it under Linux. We'll give them a tip of the hat as well. And in the news segment, we're going to talk about the massive Valve updates. We've got Steam machine names, dates, and prices. We're going to talk about that. We've got the Valve controller. We'll talk about that. Something new that I think runs Linux coming from Valve that we don't have a lot of details on. And maybe OpenGL's replacement. Noah, embrace yourself. We even have Gabian talking about writing open source code on the show today. It is crazy. And then also in the news segment, we've got all the other roundups from the week that we'll jump into for you. So don't worry, it's not just gaming news, of course, although, I mean, it was a big week for gaming. But there is perhaps a lawsuit brewing for VMware. We'll talk about that and maybe their use of Linux code, as well as features coming to Linux 4.0 that may mean you never have to reboot again. And finally, the GNOME desktop is catching up in an area that the KDE desktop has had a very important lead in for a long time. And then we've got feedback and all of that. But Noah, it's our pick segment first. And we got crazy picks. We got 3 desktop picks this week, which is nuts. Crazy amount of picks. But first, it's our Runs Linux. So brace yourself. No, I didn't really talk to you much about this one, so I don't know how much you read because I kind of wanted to get your reaction. It's called the Kuber Box, I think. The Kuber Box. It's a 6-screen, waterproof cube that runs Linux. Okay? It's on a Kickstarter right now. It's got 265 backers, $60,000 pledged of a goal of $150,000 with 20 days left to go. Noah, I propose to you we watch a little bit of the Kickstarter video, because right now you might be a little skeptical. All right, so I'm going to play a bit of this.
I'm a little skeptical how you can put 6 screens in water and not have the thing blow up. Last time I tried that with my phone, it didn't work out so well.
All right, so here, we'll give it a go.
That was just one screen.
We'll see. I mean, it's Linux, so that's probably how, Noah. I mean, just think about it, you know.
Must be.
Linux can do all. All right, Kickstarter, go. Kickstarter, now go. Hey, it's just sitting there, Noah. Well, maybe we don't get the video. I don't think we're going to get the video. It doesn't seem to be working.
Well, maybe the chipmunks are bringing the video down. I think you just need to be patient.
Okay, well, I'll give the chipmunks a minute. So
maybe you could try that. Click that play button.
I happen to know. Well, is that what you do to get it to work? Well, here you can see they do have an animated GIF, which tends to work a little better. And I got a little bit of the hardware specs here for you, so you can figure out what it's powered by. This little cube.
It's powered by Linux, Chris.
This little cube. Now, think of something maybe like, keep in mind, like, maybe the Amazon Echo. It could be a device in that range. It's got an ARM processor in it. Not super fast, 454 megahertz, 64 megabytes of RAM, 4 gigabyte SD card. It's got a 7800 milliamp battery. Oh, it has a really cool charging system we'll talk about here in a second. And it's powered by, get ready for this, Arch Linux. Yep.
Really?
Yeah, it's powered.
Really?
Yeah, it's powered by Arch Linux. Yep. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's pretty cool, right? It's dustproof, waterproof. It's made of polycarbonate. They're trying to make it as thin as possible. It's got QI wireless charging. It has a speaker built into it. It has a microphone. So you can get it. You can read it to you. You can have it like when you're in the kitchen. You can have it do step-by-step cooking directions. You can put it on top of this tray to have it automatically charge. It's really nice and light. I don't know why the video doesn't work for us. I could try reloading the page, I suppose. Maybe that would get the video started.
Yeah,
it's kind of neat to see it.
You know what else you could try? Try doing it in Firefox.
Noah, your face. Noah, your face with the Firefox. You want me to try it in Firefox? You know what? Just as an experiment, we'll just try it in Firefox because it probably will work.
All right, let's try it in Firefox. Let's see what happens.
And after all of the bad-mouthing I've given Firefox on the show last year, I feel like maybe 2015 is the year where Firefox should get a good rep, so maybe it'll work. We'll see. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen, the Firefox challenge. Let's see, and
Firefox box crashes?
Nothing. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. The video doesn't
Maybe the
work
video's
because it
broken.
got all wet because the device isn't waterproof, the chat room says.
I thought the Linux was supposed to fix that.
So the Cooper box, well, I tell you what, I just because Chris always comes prepared to these kinds of things, Noah, I always do my homework. I also pulled us up a backup article from Linux Gizmos that has some interesting deets. So even though we can't watch the video, we can learn about it ourselves. You can see here, you could put like Tetris, so it has games. It also has multiplayer games. The screen itself is multi-touch. You also obviously control it and load apps from a smartphone, kind of like you do with the Pebble Watch, as a matter of fact. The Kickstarter, it's starting at $299. The project is open through March 29th, and shipments are expected in November. $299 to get you started, Noah. What do you think about that?
I think that's a little expensive. I mean, it probably is fair for what goes in to make the box, but seems a little expensive for I can do what exactly with it?
Well, it's a great for. Look, that's a baby right there, Noah, playing with it. You see how that's a baby, and see that attractive lady in her kitchen, and it's telling her how to boil her stuff.
Right.
Women like to sit in the kitchen and boil stuff, and that picture confirms that for me. So I like that.
Yes.
That's what that
does that attractive lady in the kitchen, does she have a smartphone that could perhaps tell her how to boil things? And that infant possibly be just as entertained with a $2 rattle? You know, my kids are more entertained by the boxes their Christmas presents come in than the Christmas presents themselves.
Yeah,
So
I hate that.
Can't really see spending that much money on a light up box.
Well, okay.
To give my infant.
I'll give you one.
Or my
I'll give you
wife to
one
boil
example
water.
where I think it's got a pretty solid. I think it has a pretty solid a use case. You ready for this?
I'm ready. I'm listening.
On your podcast set, back in the corner with your logo and stuff rotating on it, right? Right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
yes,
the use
I
case
agree.
right
that
there,
would be awesome. You know what else? You gave me an idea. Here's what
What?
else I could do. I could put it in my office behind my desk.
Yeah.
Because I found that clients are more interested in what you have to say if there are interesting things for them to look at
Sure.
when they're in the office.
Sure. Yeah.
And so for example, I have a naked woman that holds
Right.
my business cards up.
Sure, yeah.
And covers
Yeah.
herself with my
Right.
business card.
Right.
You know how much attention that gets?
I do something
Yeah.
similar so that way people don't notice all the food I drop on my shirt. That's the same technique as, a distraction. So it'd be good for that. It would be good. So it's called the Cooper box. You can get it for $300, and it runs Arch. So there you go. I don't really have much more to say other than that. Good luck to him.
Yeah.
I love that it runs Linux with 6 256-pixel touch-enabled sides. I think that idea is kind of cool, too.
You know what? Running Linux, who cares what it does and who cares what it's useful for? It runs Linux. That's all we need to know. That's what I always say. I said that once.
You just said that, Noah. That's what you
I did.
You just said that.
I did.
Yeah. Hey, you know what else I'll say? I'll say DigitalOcean rocks. DigitalOcean is our first sponsor of the Linux Action Show this week, and I've got a promo code I'd like you to remember after I tell you about them. It's LAS Digital, one word, LAS Digital, and save that, and then you can apply that DigitalOcean and get a $10 credit. Now, why? Why do you need a $10 credit for what? Chris, slow down. You're confusing my brain. It is too early, Chris. What the hell? Daylight savings? I understand. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you, to spin up your own cloud server. Oh, you're not a server expert? You're not an IT person? It don't matter. It don't matter. DigitalOcean's got you covered. You are a server admin. You are an IT expert. You are going to be elated with how awesome and easy DigitalOcean is. You can get started in less than 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at just $5 per month. That's legit. $5 a freaking month. You can get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte, 1 terabyte of transfer for $5 a month. They got data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. Multiple data centers in those locations. Gosh, they rock.
We always talk about the advantages of DigitalOcean from the ability to spin up droplets and stuff like that. But I don't think what we ever really talk about is support. And that's something that's really important, especially, if you're somebody like me who, I rely on that stuff for my customers. And so DigitalOcean's reputation translates to my reputation, right?
Yep.
So last night, it started the night before, but it got resolved last night. I had an issue with a droplet, and I opened a support ticket. I think within 10 minutes, they had assigned somebody to my case, and he was there typing away, and he says, can you try this for me? And he asked me for a couple of tests from the server, which I gave him. And then eventually they found out that there was really no way they were going to be able to fix the droplets. You know what they did? They moved the droplet to an entirely different virtual host for me. So they said, we're just going to pick your droplet up and move it to a different host so you don't have that problem. And if that had been a real server, if it had been a physical server and something had gone wrong with it, which is kind of what I'm assuming happened, there would be no moving it. I mean, I would have to call the manufacturer and get another server there. Then I'd have to pull the thing out of the rack and move the hard drive over and then redo a bunch of stuff with the network configs because it would change the ETH0 to something else. And God knows whatever's referencing that would have to all get changed.
Yes.
And none of that happened. I sat there in my skippies with my laptop and went, hi guys, can you fix this for me?
Hi guys.
And then I waited for the email to come back that said, sorry, Noah, it's fixed. Yeah, that was my troubleshooting.
That's nice, isn't it? Yeah, and when
it was amazing.
When you're doing the self-management, they've got it all in this dashboard that is all right there, web standards compliant, works in any browser. It's simple, very, very intuitive, and you can replicate the functionality with their API, so you can snap it into a management infrastructure or utilize one of their apps. You can get started in no time.
You know how easy that API is to use? I was in the mumble room complaining about how something wasn't working on the droplet when we were having this problem, and I couldn't power the droplet on, and within like 10 minutes, Zarok in the mumble room had written a script that would turn my droplet on using their API.
Yeah.
It took like 10 minutes. He looked at it and he's like, "Oh, this is easy."
Yeah, there's so many good things out there already too, because like it is really straightforward. So the community really jumps on top of it. Plus, they have a ton of really good tutorials as well. So when you use our promo code LASTDigital, LAS Digital, one word, lowercase, you'll get a $10 credit. You can try out the $5 rig 2 months for free. I say, go play with CoreOS. Yes, they've added FreeBSD. That's lovely and a very nice operating system, but CoreOS, I think, represents perhaps the future of cloud-hosted Linux, where the base operating system is actually essentially rolling, and the applications are isolated inside containerized environments. Well, DigitalOcean has been at the forefront of Docker since Docker became a thing, and now DigitalOcean is working directly with the CoreOS project to be subscribed directly to CoreOS updates from the mainline project. So you get direct access to future CoreOS updates on a DigitalOcean droplet with their incredible speeds. It's a great opportunity to learn or go deploy something serious. We're going to talk about it a little more, but the very feed you're looking at from Noah right there. Hi, Noah. Why, that's being bounced off a DigitalOcean droplet right now. You can use it for testing, for production, whatever it is. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code LASTDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. Got three
and one
picks.
last thing.
Yeah.
They raised my limit from 25 to 50, so I'm no longer stuck at 25.
So you can now have up to 50 droplets?
I can now up to 50 droplets.
You're a maniac. You're a maniac. I love it.
They're so easy, and they're so cheap.
I know. I love it. I've got a bunch, too. I don't have 50, though. Okay, so why 3 app picks? Well, so this is a media production episode of the Linux Action Show, and we absolutely wanted to give you some solid media production applications. One, perhaps, that has a lot of potential down the road, and one that could help you distribute your productions once you've created, especially the larger ones if you're going to do video. But we're going to talk about both audio and video in today's show. But turns out a new game came out for Linux that's crazy great, on sale, and it's so much fun that I also wanted to make that an app pick. So we have 3 desktop app picks for you this week. I'll start with the crazy great, fun Torchlight 2. It's been out for a while for Windows platform, now available for Linux, and it's on sale as part of a SteamOS sale we're going to talk about later in the show. 80% off, $3.99. This game is $4. This game is $4 freaking dollars. Now, if you liked Diablo at all, you will love this game. It is literally made by people who left Blizzard, that worked on Diablo, and then went to go make a better game. And they took everything they knew about making that game and made a better game. It's a little simpler, but it works very well. I played it on my new XPS 13 with high-resolution 4K graphics. It played fine. I've played it here in the studio. Steam save works, so I can play between machines. It is a hack and slash. You will be clicking the hell out of your mouse, and it is a great game. And for $3.99, this is one of the best games you can get on the Linux desktop. At that price point, you got to jump on it because I don't know how long that sale is. It does go on sale fairly frequently because it's not a brand new game anymore. But this is, again, a prime example of a port done right. I've had very few games that out of the box work perfectly under my high DPI Linux desktop, and this is one of them. I'm a hardcore Diablo 2 fan. We all know Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 never made it officially to Linux desktop. Well, you don't need it now. This is a native Linux game in Steam for $4. It's great. It's called Torchlight 2, and I highly, highly recommend it. I've been playing the hell out of it, and I love it. Noah, do you game much?
No, I here. You know what's funny? Here, this will tell you my interest in gaming. Steam came out for Linux, and I spent like $100 on games. And I think if you look at the total time played, they're all like they can be measured in the single of minutes.
Yeah.
Because I never actually played any of them. I wanted to be able to say that I was one of the first people to buy games on Linux. So I am a gamer as it relates to supporting more things happening on Linux, and thus more people coming to Linux. And past that, I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
I play Counter-Strike 1.6,
so
which I get made a lot of fun of.
No, that's fine. I also I have a hard time myself sticking with a lot of games. I buy them and I don't stick with them. I can definitely tell you that Torchlight is a game I'll be sticking with. So if you have a hard time with games really gaining traction, this is a good one. And the fact that the Steam Sync saving works means that if you have rigs that you blow away, you can keep loading it from time to time and just play it on a weekend when you have some free time. This is a good one. I recommend it mostly.
That's my problem right there, is finding the free time.
Well, I'm the same way, though. I don't have a lot of free time, but like I just happened to have a little time last night. Like I had a little more energy than I normally do at night around 8 o'clock when I put the kids to bed. I was like, I'm going to go kill an hour. And it was really a lot of fun. And I could see myself just picking it up in another week or two when I have an hour to kill and just playing again. Or
the gameplay doesn't take a lot to figure out.
No. Especially if you're just used to regular hack and slashes, but it steps you through it. It's very straightforward. And
that was what appealed to me about Race of Sun was it was one of those games that I installed and it was just right off the bat I was like, oh, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then 9 hours later I'm like, wow, I should go back to work now.
You'll feel that way with Torchlight as well. And check out the Linux Gamecast this weekend when they eventually get their episode out. They'll have a review of it because they've been loving it too. And you can find it on Steam right now. I have a link in the show notes. It's $3.99. I don't know for how long. I don't know how long. I do have the notes, I think, in the show notes, how long the Steam sale ends. Promotion ends in 23 hours, 26 minutes. So not a lot of time. So I will also put a link in the chat room for those of you watching live because in fact, I think I might have bought a multi-pack, but I'm not sure. Sometimes when it's a deal that good, you really just got to go get it. And who cares if it came out in 2012? It's just a damn good game. All right, moving on. For those of you who don't care about games and you're here to learn a little bit more about media production, Noah and I don't really have a lot of experience with SnowMix, but Noah's actually tried it to an extent. But SnowMix could be one of these pieces of software that when it finally gets all of the little kinks worked out, could be a cornerstone media production piece of software for Linux. Don't you think?
So if you look back at, I can't remember the exact episode number. I'm guessing it was around 300. You and Matt did an episode talking about why you are forced to use an Apple to do a lot of the final stages. Before
essentially
it goes
came
out
down to
the air.
Wirecast.
Right, and the reason is as you mentioned is there's just no the tools weren't there to do a lot of the things that you did in Linux, and so this is one of those fundamental key pieces that was missing and is now available, or maybe has been, but just didn't really have the traction before. Is to do live video switching, that you can switch between different cameras. So we have the capture part taken care of with the capture card we're going to get to in a little bit. We have the outputting taken care of, which we're going to get to in a little bit with FFmpeg. What you're missing in the middle is being able to switch from different camera sources, and that's where SnowMix comes in. Now I was able to get it installed one time. I had to compile it from source. I couldn't get it to work in the AUR, and I found a PPA, but it 404'd. Surprise, surprise. So I ended up compiling it from source, and I got it to work. The problem is the laptop that I got it to work on only had 2 USB ports, and I couldn't get enough. I didn't have enough USB ports to get the more than one camera and the audio interface, so I could try and switch between them. So I got to see that it functionally works, but it's going to take a little bit to play with it. The nice thing about something like production is you essentially build an appliance. So we can take a box, turn it into a production box, and it never has to necessarily get changed or blown away, because all it has to do is take that video in, switch between it, and then spit it back out. And as long as it does that once, we can just freeze the box, and it'll be like that indefinitely.
Yeah, and so this software, which I have yet to get working, but it does seem to be quite promising and does seem to be active. It was last updated February 2nd, 2015. So it's under active development, SnowMix, and the idea is that it solves a lot of these problems we've had, including even audio feed management, streaming, and switching. So it's something we're keeping an eye on. There's also, of course, Open Broadcaster. OBS is another one that people know a lot about, and it's okay too. But this one is something that I and now really thanks to Noah, FM tracking. And I think, Noah, you and I will just keep testing it, and we'll report back when we get it working. But it doesn't mean other people might not. Maybe their configs, it'll work better for them. I was trying under Arch, and you were trying under what?
I tried it under both Arch and Ubuntu. I got it to compile on Ubuntu, but I take that back. I got it to compile under Arch. All we have to do is get it working one time, and then, like I said, once you build it and once it works one time, it's basically good to go. So, and that's the nice thing about doing stuff like that. Right, right. Clonezilla, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, it's definitely possible. All right, so that is that's SnowMix, and that's how, if you're going to do video, you might want to move stuff in and out of your capture rig, so that way you can roll from multiple cameras at once. Like here's camera shot 1, camera shot 2, camera shot 3. That we're doing right now if you're watching the video version. Now, once you make something, even if it's a large audio file, it can be really expensive to distribute that. Now, in the production section, I'll give you a few tips on how you can distribute your media files pretty cheaply, especially if you're just going to do an audio podcast or something like that. But if you want to distribute a video, you go to a conference or something like that, and you want to share it, it can be very expensive. One thing that you probably immediately came to mind was torrents. Well, there is a great app that, especially if you're using something like DigitalOcean to distribute your media files, you could use on a remote server. rTorrent. It is a command line torrent client, and it is really, really good. And we never talk about it because it's not all that flashy, but rTorrent is really one of the coolest BitTorrent clients out there because you can log in. I do it over Mosh, but you can log in over SSH, which is basically the same thing. You start up rTorrent, you seed it from your droplet or your VPS or wherever you're doing it from, and you send the file out from there, and you set up the torrent to do a web seed from that droplet, and it gives people insane initial download speeds. So the first few people that jump on your torrent, pull down the web seed from my droplet, they get it at, as basically as fast as their home connection can take it from my DigitalOcean droplet. They immediately become seeders of the torrent swarm, and now they're feeding out the files all out the web. And I started all by kicking off an rTorrent session on my DigitalOcean droplet. So rTorrent is a super great BitTorrent client. There's probably a lot of command line ones. rTorrent one's the one I love. You ever play with it, Noah?
I haven't played with it specifically, but I'm always about command line tools, if only because I feel geeky. I actually installed the Telegram command client, and I'll have to send you the screen cap. It's mildly creepy. Every time you touch your phone with Telegram, it marks that, and I get a push notification in the command line client. So, for example, I could tell you and Angela were talking because it would say Angela Fisher online, Chris Fisher online, Angela Fisher online, Chris Fisher online, and it would go back and forth, and I'm like, oh, they're having a conversation, and then it would stop for a little bit, and then it would start again, and I could tell who was starting the conversation.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking is that would be perfect in the Guake drop-down terminal. Like, because
it's a little too verbose. It needs some of that stuff needs to not be there. Otherwise, because that's why I couldn't use it. It gets to be, if I constantly see notifications of people opening the app, that's useless to me. Mm-hmm. I need to only see notifications when there's something that I want to see. I couldn't find a way to configure it. So, but it's fun to do things in the terminal.
I feel like I should also mention that the rTorrent project is also the home of the libtorrent project, and you can find more about that in the link in the show notes. So there you go. So there's Torchlight 2 and rTorrent. So those are two. There's two desktop picks right there. This is crazy. Which is just we could stop there. We could be done. We probably should be done. But we had a third app pick. I'm trying to. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah. Okay. So oh man. Look at all this good stuff. The show notes are full of good stuff this week. So we have, we had Torchlight, SnowMix, and rTorrent. Those are 3 picks, and now we have a crazy great spotlight. It's something that Noah put in here, and he's like, hey, do you mind if we give these guys a plug? And I was like, yeah, we should, because we've been using them for years in some of the music and some of our shows, and it's a free resource that you can take advantage of. And it's really great for just adding like a little bit of like background music to a montage, or like what do you use it for?
Well, so essentially, back when I was in college, I was doing broadcast engineering, and we would go to do these projects. And my professor would say, "All right, so I want you to do a project, and I want you to do an introduction video, just so we could learn cutting, so you could learn how to cut a clip." And he said, "I want you to film something and then cut it into 2." And what I found was I could one-up everyone else in the room by adding music in the background. The problem is, especially if you're doing it for school, they're very, very strict on how you deal with copyright. And you have to make sure that you're Right. Well, YouTube, but it wasn't going to YouTube at that point. But the they would look at every resource that you put in, every picture, every graphic, every piece, every music file, every voiceover. You had to own the copyright, or you had to have permission to use it. And there's a guy by the name of Kevin MacLeod. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And what he does is he's decided that it is so inexpensive for him to share his music for free, as long as you give him credit for it. He's willing to do that. So he takes his entire archive and puts it up on a website. I think it's Incompetech, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yep, Incompetech.
Yeah, and it's all there for you to use for free. You can download it, and then of course, back when I was in college, when I didn't have any money, that was a real great way to go. Today, if I was going to do it, you can actually hire him to compose a piece of music specifically for your project. And I contacted him a while back for a different project, and his prices are really reasonable. So. It seems, the website's really great, and it's one of those people that he's one of those guys that give, and then he asks. So it's the fundamental idea of a true community member, everything I like kind of about Linux is the same thing I liked about Incompetech, and so it's the first place I go when I need music.
Our SciByte theme is Incompetech that we've used for years. That's Incompetech. Yeah, this is also Incompetech right here. Yeah, so he's got a lot of really good stuff that we've used it. A lot of the shows that we used to do back in just when we put music underneath it, and he puts it all right there. So you go to his site, it's Incompetech.com. You go to royalty-free music. Now check out his licensing and what the terms are before you just go use it. But if you got a podcast or a media production, you can go do searches based on a feel or a genre. So you can say, I want something exciting or I want something dramatic, and it will pull you up results like that. Or you can go just search by genre. So like here is like funk and blues or video classics. I love the video classics because they're kind of like chiptunies, which are always really fun. And again, you can then filter this category by the feed. So I could say like uplifting if I wanted, so that way everybody got uplifting. And then you get the whole database list here, and you play the ones you want right here. Now, as we saw earlier, the streaming in my browser isn't working. But all of these will just play right there, and then you just download the one you want, and you just get an MP3 file right there. So if I just click download, it just starts the download immediately. I don't have to sign in. I don't have to create an account or anything like that.
Exactly.
Here's the licensing information.
And his terms, if you don't have, obviously you want to read them before you use it in a production, but his terms are very reasonable. Essentially, what the short of it is, give him credit if you're going to use his work. So if it's a video, put it at the end in the credits, just tag him in there. If it's an audio production, he has a little audio sampler that you can put in at the end of your audio podcast that says music was provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, and we did give him a little attribution too. It was really cool. So that's Incompetech.com. You can go check that out. See, this is a lot of picks. So hopefully you got one more in you, because this is a big one. LinuxFest Northwest is right around the corner. We really want to go big this year. Every year we've tried to make our production a little bit bigger and bigger at LinuxFest. Last year we really hit a high note with 2-day live streams, all kinds of stuff, tons of guests, great interviews, and swag. This year we want to take it up another notch. We want to try to bring out as much of the Jupiter Broadcasting family as possible. We want to fly in our hosts from the East Coast like Michael Dominic and Chris Moore and Alan Jude. We want to bring obviously Noah in and the production staff in. We want to bring them all to Bellingham. So that way, if you come out, you get a chance to meet them, but also we all get a chance to be in one spot. That's really good for our team. We get a chance to sync up, and everybody gets energized with the plan for the rest of the year, but we also get to make some brainstorming and do some production right here while everybody's in one place, and just go out and have a good time together. It's going to be a lot of fun, and to make LinuxFest really happen this year, we're launching our official 2015 last shirt. The teespring.com/Linux is the location. This shirt right here, we'll use the proceeds from this to fund the as much of the travel costs as we can for everybody we're going to bring out, and all of the production costs there as close as we can. One thing we did decide to do is we decided to go as low price as possible. So if you really do want to support us, maybe buy two, because we're not really making a lot of money on the shirts, but we wanted as many people at the fest in last gear as possible, because that worked out so awesome last year. It was a sea of last logos, and we want to do it again this year. teespring.com/Linux. We've got shirts available. They've got our new logo, or I guess it's now a year old, right up there. Beautiful, gorgeous logo on the shirt. Of course, we've got additional styles available. We got the ladies' tee out there. We've got the long sleeve shirt, which looks really, really sharp. We've got the hoodie available. teespring.com/Linux. 22 days left. It'll take about 10 days to print and ship and everything. So I think even if you're international, you'll get this Bad Mamma Jamma in time if you're going to fly in for LinuxFest Northwest. You're still going to get this in time. Linux. Teespring.com/Linux. Get the Linux Action Show shirt and help fund our big efforts at LinuxFest Northwest. We want to go really big this year. And we just, there's really a couple of ways we can do it. We can do something like this and have it funded by our audience and give you guys something in return. Or we can go try to seek out a bunch of sponsors. And it's not that we're against doing that. And that's seriously not a bad route to go necessarily. However, the thing I love about this route is it also means that everybody there gets to rock some swag too. So you guys get something. We give hopefully enough funding to do this initiative, and I really like this idea because it feels very organic and it feels sort of perfect for a Linux community-focused show. So I hope this works out, but we do need your support at teespring.com/Linux. Also, if you don't want a shirt but you want to support the efforts, patreon.com/today. We're also raising funds on our Jupiter Broadcasting Patreon over at patreon.com/today. But this... the thing is, this is the time to get this because we have this process so dialed in now. Like, we have worked out the kinks. We have great relationships with Teespring. Their printing process is down to an art. The logo has been specifically designed for the printing process. This is the all black and white edition of the Linux Action Show 300 logo, available on the various shirts, the ladies' tee, the hoodie, the long sleeve shirt. Go check it out. Teespring.com/Linux. I'm crazy excited. And I'd love to see you there in some last swag. And now, Noah, you got to update your swag now. You got to get a new shirt.
Yeah, I do. Here's the thing. I don't have to update my swag. You know why? Because it shows up in the mail for free. Like this Tech Talk Today coffee mug that it's like Christmas. I just randomly, I walk out to my doorstep and all of a sudden, boom, there's a coffee cup on my doorstep. And in fact, later in the segment, I think we're going to talk about a mouse pad that, again, didn't pay for that, didn't request it. It just showed up on my doorstep.
Now, don't give the wrong impression, though, because I don't know if we're giving this one away for free because we're trying to raise funds. And if we give it away for free, that doesn't exactly raise funds. So, we might in the
as far as the Patreon, though.
Yeah, the patrons also, there's we don't talk about it a lot in last, but there is an entirely different swag club membership you can get in where we send out swag from time to time over at patreon.com/today. Not related to this. So don't let Noah confuse you. It's not related to this. This is us trying to raise funds. I don't know what our plan is there for the patrons, but they're always giving out good stuff there. I want the long sleeve shirt already. I want the t-shirt already. And we have multiple colors too. I like the blue a lot. Look at that. Look at that.
One of each.
Look at that. Look how sharp that is with the white logo. Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
That is, man. I would see you coming across the room and be like, that is a handsome person in that shirt. Or beautiful. Depends.
Mm-hmm.
All right, go grab one. Teespring.com/Linux. Even if you can't go to LinuxFest, you can still help us get there because it'll give you the coverage and also get to rock yourself some swag. And then we make it out into your area. You could still rock that and be like, boom. Be pretty impressed. All right, Noah, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Go to last.ting.com to get started. That's our mobile service provider because it makes sense. It's really mobile. It does make sense. There's no contract. There's no early termination fee, and it's just a flat $6 for each line, and then you just pay for your usage. No gimmicky plans you have to jump through hoops to try to make sure you fit into. It's just what you use, and every plan comes with everything you'd expect. Hotspot, tethering, picture messaging, caller ID, voicemail, all the standard stuff you'd expect from your cellular phone plan is included with Ting. There's just no early termination fees or contracts. You own the phones outright. Isn't that great? Go to last.ting.com to get $25 off your first device. And now, if you have a Ting-compatible device, and there's more of them than ever because they're rolling out on GSM too, you'll get $25 in service credits. And so you can go to Ting, try out their Bring Your Own Device page and see what you can bring. You might be impressed. If you got something that's been compatible with the Sprint network or the T-Mobile network, you could probably just bring it right with you. And if you get a $25 credit, that might pay for more than your first month. It did for me. I brought over an Evo 4G back in the day, and my first month and change were absolutely free. And when you go to Ting, you'll also notice they have a bunch of great unlocked devices you can pick up from them or bring your own as well. What were you going to say, Noah?
No, I was just going to jump in there and say that if you're concerned about security, obviously CDMA is the way to go. However, if you're concerned about ultimate flexibility, GSM is all the rage. And I got my GSM card and I was like, what am I going to do with this? I went and pulled out like my Nokia 5390, which is from like years ago. I mean back we're talking like 1999, 2000 era. And I stuck my SIM card from Ting in and I powered the phone on and had service. It worked. Like they can restrict what you can use on CDMA. They can record those serial numbers and restrict them so they can enforce things like you have to have GPS tracking and you have to have E911, you have to have this and you have to have that. There's no real way for them to do that on the GSM. So you can go buy a Motorola StarTAC off of eBay for $19 and throw your GSM card in there and activate that puppy and use it. And so that I activated my Nokia. And what's great is I charged it one time and like the battery, like people measure battery in hours. I'm measuring right now. I'm measuring it in weeks. Like we'll see how many weeks I get out of my 5390 charge because it's been on for like a week straight.
That's the
and I had one charge and it's not dead yet. I still have like 5 bars.
And now you can also just pick up the GSM SIMs from Ting and just throw them in like a tablet or something like that, and then you just have data and you just pay for it when you use it, or like a MiFi hotspot. That's crazy great use for that. Yeah. So now we've talked a lot about Ting, but there's one thing that we've never really answered that is extremely important from your mobile provider, and it's something you're never going to get answered from your other mobile providers. And Ting is here with an answer of, when you ask an exec, what is his favorite beer?
Nick asks, what's your favorite style of beer?
So, look, I'm Canadian, so I've always been partial to polar bear. They're big and white and fluffy, and I do know they're dangerous.
I thought he said beer.
So, I do also have a bit of a soft spot for panda. I mean, pandas are just so big and cuddly. Who could resist?
Beer. Wait, I said beer. Oh, I just got punked on that, I think I just got punked. That wasn't about beer at all. Go to last.ting.com. Go check them out. Because I still want to know now. Now I still want to know. The answer is out there. I do believe. And go check them out. I'll go to last.ting.com to also try out their savings calculator and just trying that, get an idea. And this just lets them know that you appreciate them supporting the show. It's a good chance for you. And check out their blog, too. They have a bunch of other great tips on there. Go check out Ting. Okay, Noah, well, GDC happened. That's a thing. It's a game developers conference. And this company you may have heard of before. I know you're not a big gamer. Their name is Valve. And they were there. Are you familiar with Valve? No, you're good on Valve? You're good? Yeah.
I know that they run on Linux.
Yes.
They make a product that runs on Linux.
Well, so SteamDB has a great roundup of everything we learned. Steam growth continues to be very strong in itself. SteamOS, we really haven't heard much for a while, but now we actually have some shipping dates coming up later in November. Alienware is on board with the machine. The Steam controller, we have a final version of the Steam controller, looks really good. But here's a new piece of hardware that we don't know for sure runs Linux, but I bet it does. It's called the Steam Link. It's a small computer that you hook up to your television that automatically discovers other instances of Steam running on your LAN. And then you'll be able to use the Steam in-home streaming to stream from your PC to your television. It has USB 3.0, Ethernet, HDMI, and 802.11 AC. According to Valve, it can play in-home streaming streams at 1080p 60 hertz, and it'll be available for $50. This has got to be a Linux PC. A little mini Linux PC.
Confirms that it runs SteamOS, yeah.
Yep, okay. Thank you, Imacon, in the chat room. Then here we go. Here's the details on Steam machines. We have a whole bunch of models. I'll have them all outlined in the show notes. Essentially, this is how Valve prices them. You start at the Steam Link for $50. Then you go up to what they consider to be current generation console prices. And they say these are current generation console prices with better graphics. Then they have the high-end stuff that's like over $1,000. And that's really big. And it ranges from there, like from $400, $800 to $1,000. There's this one right here, this CyberX. It's an Intel Core i7 NVIDIA GTX 9800, 4 gigabytes on the video card, quote unquote, 1 terabyte CPU, hard drive, 8 gigabytes of RAM, $1,400. That's extremely expensive, but they have a wide range of prices from $400 to $1,200. What do you think on the pricing, Noah?
I think that the Steam Link, I think that the Steam boxes and SteamOS is going to really appeal to people that have already invested a lot of money into their gaming rig and want to use that all the way around their house. And then I also think it's going to appeal to people like me, who I'm not a real big gamer, but if I could buy a console box that I could play my Steam games on and plug it into my large display and play it every once in a while, that would be, I could see a lot of use in that. I could definitely see my kids getting into that.
Yeah.
But as far as, I don't see a lot of people spending $1,000, $1,200 some dollars on a dedicated gaming box. That most of those people that want to spend that kind of money are going to buy the parts and build it themselves.
Yeah, or they'll just buy a PS4.
But the advantage of SteamOS over like PlayStation.
Oh, I know what the advantages are. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of advantages.
I can buy once and play everywhere.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, as long as the game selection is available on Steam, and I think it probably is for most people, I mean, I see a huge trend. The trend has been moving away from consoles and more towards PC gaming. And so if they're trying to get back to the console by essentially impersonating the PCs, so I don't see people going back to PlayStation or Xbox or any of those other. I think they're either going to stay with PC or they're going to go to Steam OS to get the things that they liked about the console.
Here's what has to drive it. Here's what has to drive it. Things like the HTC Vive a headset that they're working on. It's a built-in. It uses a Steam VR platform. It has 2 displays. It's a VR headset like the Oculus. Other things like this, the new controller, the Link, and things like that, give the Steam console certain advantages. So we'll have to wait and see. But to celebrate all of the announcements, right now, Valve has a massive Steam OS sale going on. More than 50 titles are on sale, including some of PC World's favorites from 2014, like the Talos Principle, Translator, Wasteland 2 was their Game of Year, Metro Redux, The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, Borderlands, the pre-sequel, a great game, Civilization Beyond Earth, new game from them, on sale, XCOM Enemy Unknown, fantastic game, and of course the classic Goat Simulator, all on sale right now because they're big push for Steam games. So it's a good time to go grab some games on Linux this week specifically. So that's all the stuff we know about that is down the road. There's been something sort of boiling in the background for a while, and that is finding a replacement for OpenGL. And we've heard a little bit, and we talked a little bit about GL Next. And it now has an official name, sort of, I don't know if maybe it's a nod to the hat to Leonard Nimoy or if the timing just happened to be perfect, but they're calling it Vulcan. And Vulcan is going to be pretty ambitious and maybe eventually replace OpenGL. And Maximum PC had an interview with Gabe Newell where he talks a little bit about it, so I'll play a couple of minutes of it.
It really puts the PC front and center as the premier content authoring platform. Another thing that's important to us is... it sounds kind of like a strange thing to do, but it makes sense, I think, if you look at it in terms of the overall PC industry, is we're supporting Vulcan. So Vulcan is previously known as OpenGL Next. It was, from our point of view, you have lots of interesting stuff happening in graphics technology right now, but it tends to be restricted to a specific platform or to a specific vendor's hardware products. And Vulcan solves that problem. It's a cross-platform, it works on Mac, Linux, Windows, Steam OS. It's going to be supported by, Valve and Blizzard and Epic and Unity. And it works, with NVIDIA graphics hardware or ATI's graphics hardware or whomever. We're actually going to make a Vulcan driver release for the Intel integrated graphics. So it'll be source code that anybody can use. If you're a software developer and you want to understand what's happening on the inside of your graphics pipeline, you can look at it. Or if you're a hardware manufacturer and you want a reference design that you can build off of. And that's just how we're trying to support the Kronos Group's efforts to make Vulcan a cross-platform solution.
So I think that's pretty cool. So Valve is working on developing an Intel driver that people can use. Look at this working driver as in a spec. And, I only can be so interested about this kind of stuff. OpenGL, Mantle, Metal, whatever. I don't give a crap, right? I just want my games to work. And what I do care about is that if the industry is going to decide on something new, I want to make sure the right people are behind the one that we all decide on. It seems like this has the right people. I like that they're designing an open source driver. Doesn't mean anything for us end users? Probably not for a while, because even once this stuff gets out there and gets stabilized, stuff has to be written to it, right? And that seems like then that takes a whole generation of games. So unless I'm missing something, it's quite a ways out. But what I am happy about is that Valve and Linux and open source are really at the beginning stage of this discussion, right? It's not like something's being decided by the industry and then Linux has to play catch up and figure out how the hell we're going to make this work on our platform and how are we going to reverse engineer this and please will they give us the code? And no, it's from day one. Because of SteamOS, I think, and because of Valve's involvement with SteamOS, Linux has to be part of that conversation from day one. And I think that's a really big deal. Also, Source 2 is going to be free for developers to work with, and it also supports the Alpha Vulcan API. So, Intel graphics isn't the fastest, but it's a good place to start. It's a good reference for it. And then one last note, Phoronix just notes that Steam usage still remains to be just barely above 1% under Linux. Not a lot of exclusives yet drive that. No SteamOS machines yet drive that. But it is the low. Steam usage among Linux is kind of at the lowest usage it's been for a number of months right now. So all this stuff is happening. Meanwhile, Steam usage on Linux kind of at record lows. Could be just game cycles, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there's a bunch of really great games announced coming also this week to Linux, like the Batman game and a bunch of other great ones. So it should pick up.
The reality is that people that were already on Linux are excited to be able to play their games on Linux, but I have yet to see any compelling reason why anyone would erase Windows to install Linux purely for gaming, right? So we're going to draw our niche in, and we're going to solidify our niche a little bit. But I don't think there's anything too compelling. Now, once they actually produce a Steam box, when I can go buy a box that people don't have a choice in, that it runs Linux. And if you want to wipe it off and install Windows, you could. Then I think you're going to see sales on Linux through the roof. Yeah. But I think right now there wouldn't be really any compelling reason for people to switch to Linux right now, right?
Maybe.
I mean, from a gaming perspective alone. How many gamers do you know that really care what operating system they run?
But it does. I think that's a little too white and black, because I think what it really is it's more of a gray area where people go, well, it now does these things for me, and now I can make that switch, and it's just certain games for certain people, and that just gets to be a wider and wider.
Right, but those people you're talking about a subsection of a subsection. We're talking about the people that were already wanted to be Linux users, and just gaming was holding them back. I mean, that's a very, very small margin, I think, of the total Linux. There's a lot of people like me that just switched to Linux and gave up the few games that I did play, and I'm happy to have those back, but it wouldn't have stopped me from switching to Linux.
Yep.
And then there's the people that are never going to switch to Linux because there are way too many games that they play, but then right in the middle you have those people that would switch to Linux because there's a certain subset of games that they play, and that was keeping them on Windows. And
it's not a lot of people,
I think, have come over.
Yeah, those people, yeah. And they continue to come over as their games come over. But all right, let's shift gears. Let's get all serious. Let's talk about GPL violations. The Free Software Conservancy, we've interviewed Karen from OSCON a while back, and that group is going after VMware in conjunction with a Linux kernel developer. Now, hold on. Buckle up. I'll tell you a little bit about this. So you guys all know VMware. Well, Linux developer Christoph Hillwig filed a suit in the District Court of Hamburg, Germany, with funding from the nonprofit Software Freedom Conservancy, which works to promote, improve, and develop and defend free open software. The case centers on the combined work that VMware allegedly created by combining their own code, the VM kernel, with portions of Linux code, which was licensed under the GPL2. VMware denies the lawsuit accusations, calling them without merit, but it did not address them specifically in a public statement on the matter. Hillwig is one of the most active developers of the Linux kernel. He's publicly denounced VMware's misuse of GPL license code since 2007. The Software Freedom Conservancy said in its announcement yesterday that the 2011 Conservancy discovered that VMware had failed to provide nor offer any source code for the version of BusyBox included with VMware's ESXi products, as required by the BusyBox license. The Conservancy began negotiations with VMware to seek compliance on all GPL components in the ESXi project, but progress was slowed through 2013, the group said. Now, we don't know all the details yet because court docs have not been released. The public, that's not default in Germany, so we don't get the docs unless all parties want to, I guess. The Free Software Foundation has weighed in, saying they support the lawsuit, and the Conservancy is also seeking donations to help pay for the lawsuit, which says it could take years to resolve. Any thoughts on this, Noah?
I think it's great. The GPL is worthless if we don't enforce it, right? Like it really doesn't mean anything unless we go after the people that violate it. And then, in addition, I think every time something like this comes up, one more person gets clarification. There was a guy in the Mumble room when this story came out, and I was talking about it, and there was a discussion going around, and he goes, you can't violate the GPL. Anyone can use the code for free. There's no copyright on it. That's the whole definition of the GPL, which, of course, is very much not the definition of the GPL. And stories like this enlighten people about it, and they let people know, hey, listen, it's not that there's no copyright. It's not that anyone can do whatever they want with it. There's a very specific set of rules you have to follow, and here's what they are. And as long as you're willing to abide by those rules, then you can use the code. It's just more forgiving than proprietary stuff.
Yeah, and VMware made a powerhouse of a product on top of Linux. I mean, they've really owned the virtualization world for quite a while. They're the leading industry provider. And if they didn't follow the letter of the law, well, then they weren't playing by the rules of the game. And so, in my younger years, anything that has to do with lawsuits or anything like that, I would always just recoil and be like, can't we just focus on the technology? This sucks so bad. More lawsuits. These days, I now see it more as a little bit important of a piece to keeping the software that we all rely on actually free and not getting it sort of co-opted. And also, part of the deal is if you make something better, you got to give that better back. That's how everybody gets the improvements, and that's sort of that's the contract you sign when you take that code.
And how many people, even working within the GPL, even abiding by the rules of the GPL, build a business off of the backs of Linux and then short stick the Linux community when it comes out? I.e., I'm looking at Google Drive, I'm looking at Spotify originally,
Snaps.
I'm looking at
Snaps. I follow you.
So
Yep. Yeah. So, and that's what the conservancy is all about. Okay, so let's talk about Linux kernel 4.0. I can't remember if you said it on air or who said. Somebody said, you know what they ought to do? They ought to take that live patching feature, stick it in 4.0, and make it an excuse to call it Linux 4.0. Well, guess what? That's exactly what's happening. No need to reboot after a patch coming with Linux kernel 4.0. So, a little history lesson for those of you who haven't followed this all. Red Hat and SUSE both started working on their own purely open source means of giving Linux the ability to keep running even during critical patches while they're being installed. Red Hat's program was called Kpatch, and SUSE's was called kgraft. The two companies took two different approaches. Kgraft issues a stop machine command. After that, it looks at the stack of existing processes using ftrace, and if the patch can be made easily and safely, it redirects the running code to the patched functions and then removes the now outdated code. Kgraft also uses ftrace, but it works on the thread level. When an old function is called, it makes sure the thread reaches a point that it can switch to the new function. While the end result is the same, the operating system keeps running while the patches are made. There are significant differences in performance, however. Kpatch takes from 1 to 40 milliseconds, while kgraft might take several minutes. But there's never even a millisecond of downtime with either one. That's pretty nice. So at the Linux Plumbers Conference in October 2014, the two groups got together and started to work on a way to patch without rebooting that combines the best of both programs. How about that? Essentially, what they ended up doing was putting both kpatch and kgraft in the Linux kernel 4.0. No more patching. Is this a big problem for you, Noah? Like, I was trying to think back, like, a lot of times, if a system was really so critical that I could never reboot it for a patch, I would try to design it in such a way that I could have another system that would be standing up in its place. How much do you still run into this day to day, though? Like, where hold on, everybody, I got to reboot the server. Is that still a thing for you?
For the most part, that would not be acceptable to the people I work for. I mean, in smaller businesses, you can get away with that. You can say, I want all 15 of you to shut your computers off, and we're gonna restart this machine and do an upgrade. But the reality is, you almost always, even in the smallest of businesses, I always recommend that you have at least a backup machine. And the reality is, at the cost of servers, I think you can buy a Think server on Amazon Prime for like $249 right now. At that price, it just doesn't make sense not to have redundancy. And if you're going to have that, and if you're going to have that redundancy, then it's easy enough to switch them over to a failover server while you patch one server and then bounce them back while you update the next one. So we have spent 20 years coming up with ways to get around having to restart the machine. So I don't think it's going to be that. I don't think it's that big of a deal in practice. But the reality is it's a long needed functionality, and it's certainly going to be nice, assuming you trust it.
Well, there's that.
I know a lot of people that are going to say, "Listen, I don't really care. I still want everyone off a server while I'm making changes to it."
This is what I was wondering. Like, are we introducing some super cool new way for malware to get injected into our kernel in real time, just so that way we can check a box and say we can live patch like the AIX guys can? Is that what this is about? Because it seems like if you introduce a mechanism to inject code in real time into your kernel without ever rebooting, you could inject bad stuff in real time too.
Yeah, but I mean,
maybe not. It's signed. I don't know. I mean, maybe what I could do is I could have a TPM chip, and I could have a secure boot with trusted computing, and I can make sure that all of my drivers and all of my kernel patches are signed with cryptographic signatures and blessed by Microsoft. And then I won't have to worry about malware going in my kernel. Yeah. At least I have live patching.
That's the answer.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I'm just wondering.
That's the answer. Yeah, or you could just install SE Linux and you wouldn't have to worry about it.
I'm sorry, what?
But
TPM module what?
Use SE Linux and then Linux.
Anyways,
secure operating system.
Let's talk about something that Gnome is getting that KDE's had thanks to I believe it's called KDE Connect. I've met the developer. He was a nice guy. He just recently moved to the Pacific Northwest. Well, Gnome's catching up with a brand new app that'll bring your Android notifications to your Gnome desktop, and man, is that going to be sweet with the new redesigned Gnome notifications in Gnome 3.16. Oh, I cannot wait. This is something that I really miss when I'm not running KDE. This is my kind of convergence. You get a notification on the phone. It uses there's a daemon that runs on the phone. It uses Bluetooth to push that event to your Android to your GNOME desktop. The developers are hoping it'll be ready for GNOME.3.16 when it ships. It's going to work over Bluetooth, so there's no cloud-based push notification. You don't have to have a connection to the internet for it to work. It's just going to work. It uses an app called Nutinus on the desktop side, Nuntius, and then an app on the Android side as well. And I have a link to the GitHub, the Holy Lobster GitHub, and also the blog post where the developers announce it. It's 2 developers, I believe, right now that are bringing it over, and they plan to introduce features like if you dismiss it on GNOME, it'll also clear the notification on Android and stuff like that. Nice and cool. The only thing I worry about, Noah, is I don't know if you've ever played with KDE Connect, but I'm worried about developing a whole bunch of different ways of doing this. You know what I mean? Like a whole bunch of different standards.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. First off, I like the idea of being able to do things on my desktop because, frankly, when I'm sitting down on my desktop, I don't ever want to touch my phone. There's nothing that my phone can do that my desktop can't do. And so I would just assume that any notifications that come to my phone, I would rather just deal with them on my desktop to begin with. That said, you seem to be excited about the Bluetooth Connect. I'm not. I'm a person that has a lot of Bluetooth headset. My phone connects Bluetooth to my car. My phone connects Bluetooth to my glass. And I wonder how that's going to work. If I pair it to my desktop, is it going to start kicking those other devices off? Is it not going to connect at all? How's it going to manage that?
You're just worried about Bluetooth issues?
Yeah, I mean, really.
Not really. I'm not worried about that
because
here's the thing: is if it's over Wi-Fi, then your Android device couldn't let your Wi-Fi sleep when it's sleeping. But if you have something like Bluetooth, it's lower energy. It can be constantly connected. It doesn't take as much power as the Wi-Fi antenna. I don't know. Do you have an issue when you have a lot of? Does your Android phone drop stuff when you have too much Bluetooth there, Noah?
Well, Glass has the way that the app works is I can set priorities. So I can set it. I can say when my car is in range, then don't send the audio to my Glass. Send it to my car.
I see.
The car's not in range, then send it to my Glass. If
Right.
my Glass is dying, then send it.
It
to the
won't do
headset.
audio, so it's not going to mess with your audio settings because it doesn't.
Right.
do
No,
audio.
I understand, but a pairing device, right? It's not going to. Yeah, I mean, it's going to see. I mean, if I pair it to my computer, it's going to see it as an audio device, right?
I don't know because
in the past when I paired my phone, it sees my phone as a modem, and then it sees the computer as an audio device.
See, what you're doing though is you're communicating with the little service that runs on the Android. So that probably only shows itself as like push notifications. It probably doesn't show up as an audio ADP to ADTP.
So you pair it with a specific app. You don't pair it as you normally
I don't
would
know.
with the computer. Okay.
We need somebody to try it.
Yeah,
And tell
I
us.
guess we'll see when it comes out. Yeah.
I definitely will give it a go when GNOME 3.16 ships. I think you could actually get it right now. I don't think you have to wait. But if you want that new fancy notification drop down and all that, you gotta wait. All the details about it are in the show notes. And I don't know. I think it's not using quite the same stuff that KDE Connect is using either, which is a little disappointing. And I think there's already some discussions about straightening that out. I'll keep an eye on it. I'll report back after I get a chance to kick the tires a little bit. But Noah, that's all the news for this week. When Noah became the co-host of Linux Action Show, we knew we were going to have to step up our game as far as remote video went because we wanted a solution that was entirely Linux-powered and would be rock solid and high quality. And we've got that dialed in. It took a lot of work, but I can't wait to share it with you because if you do the same, you're going to have a fantastic remote video connection. Before we jump into that, though, I want to thank our segment sponsor, and that's System 76. You know, a lot of the production we do is on System 76 rigs. Go over to System76.com and get a machine that's designed to run Linux, also supported to run Linux, and a company that supports the Linux ecosystem. System76.com has some great desktops built right here in the US of A and some laptops that you won't believe the portability, like that Ultra Pro, and they got some new rigs on the way as well. Go over to System76.com and get a computer designed to run Linux. Stop fighting with your hardware and play with your Linux. You know what I do? Is I just make sure that anywhere I have a critical machine, like the machine I'm sitting at right now, that's going to be running Linux, it has to be System 76. If I'm doing production under Linux, the last thing I want to worry about is the hardware not being reliable. So what we're going to do is walk you through the hardware and software we use to do our media production. And it was Noah's idea. What he was thinking is we just start sort of at the beginning and work all the way through the chain. So we'll start at his end of the process and then work back through my end of the process and tell you all the devices we use and then talk a little bit about remote connections.
I think the easiest way to explain this is going to be to just start from my end and then work all the way through back to you, Chris, and then you can start where my signal comes into you and take us all the way through how it goes out over the air. So the first thing is for you to come back over here and see what I see while we're doing the show. Okay, so this is what I look at. I see the studio camera, and then right in front of that is the return video display, what's coming from JB1, and then right in front of that is my desktop that I can share with Chris or look things up as we're on the air. Right below that, I forget everything, so I have a piece of paper and a pen here that I write down thoughts as they come to my head. All right, so coming off of the camera, here is the power cord and video cord. Now, I'm a bit of a wire freak, so I have cord wrapped that. Now, that cord wrap meets up with another cord wrap that comes out of the kiosk. The kiosk contains the microphone wire and the return audio wire, and then both of those wire into a single wire wrap that comes over to this machine. Now, that is a HDMI switcher, so it takes the video from my desktop and the video from the camera and then turns it into a single video feed that goes underneath the desk here to the, there is the System 76 Wild Dog, and connected under here we will see the HDMI capture card. I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. Now, from that machine, that is also connected to the PreSonus audio interface, which is in turn connected to the 16-channel mixer, which is where my microphone and return audio routes through. But all of that is eventually being fed into that System 76 machine, and then using Jitsy is going out to JB1. Let's take a look at what that HDMI interface looks like. So this is that HDMI interface device. Now, I'm particularly in love with this device, mainly because I was told by so many people that such a device didn't exist. It has an HDMI port on one side, it has USB 3.0 on the other side, and it is totally natively compatible with Linux. So I plug it into an Ubuntu 14.04 box, and it just spins right up and works. No configuration, no drivers, really nothing is needed to make this device work. They do make it in both HDMI and SDI, so if you are a true professional video freak and you're saying, I would never want to use consumer-grade HDMI, they do make an SDI one as well. I have no reason to think it isn't just as compatible with Linux. But hands down, absolutely one of my most favorite pieces of equipment that I own. Totally useful. I have one of these in my go bag for doing interviews, and then another one that stays here inside the studio. All right, we need to take a minute and talk about microphones. Now, there are two different classes, so to speak, of microphones. The first is dynamic, and the second is condenser. Condenser microphones reproduce excellent sound at a very low cost, which makes them really appealing for entry-level buyers, and even if you're doing inside studio recordings, if you're doing instruments and vocals, makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to broadcasting or podcasting, you really want to stay away from them and go with a dynamic mic if possible. The problem is, to get a good dynamic microphone with excellent off-axis rejection and excellent reproduction of the human voice, you're going to spend a little bit of money. Let's start with my all-time favorite microphone, the Electro-Voice RE20. Now, this has been a staple in the broadcasting industry for a very long time, and with good reason. It has excellent reproduction of the human voice, and again, excellent off-axis rejection. It's a great microphone. It's my favorite microphone. It's the first one I reach for anytime I need to do anything that involves going on the air or any sort of broadcasting. The next mic is at the opposite end of the spectrum. It's a condenser mic, and this is the Audio-Technica AT2020. Now, the Audio-Technica AT2020 is a very inexpensive microphone. You're looking at maybe about $90, but it is one of my absolute most favorite microphones because even though it has a low cost, it does an excellent job of reproducing the human voice, and it would easily be my second choice if I needed to pick up a microphone, even though it's a condenser mic. The third microphone that's real popular are any of the MXLs. Most of the MXL condenser microphones are sub $100, and they're a really great choice if you're looking for a budget microphone. I would probably encourage you to spend a couple extra bucks and pick up the AT2020, but the MXL makes an excellent microphone, and a lot of people have asked what the microphone we include in the Linux podcasting kit, and that is an MXL 770. The last microphone I want to talk about is, again, one of my favorite microphones for a different reason, and this is the AKG Perception 420. Now, this microphone is the best microphone to choose if you have a and I don't know how to say this politely, a crappy voice. If you're one of those people like me that God has blessed with the vocal cords of a female, and you need to fill out your voice a little bit, but you don't want that real boomy bass that comes in with a lot of condenser mics, this is a great choice. It is a condenser mic, so you are going to have a little bit of background noise, and you will want to place it a little bit further back from your mouth so you don't get that bassiness, but it's going to fill out your voice really, really well, and again, is a really excellent choice of a microphone. Comes in around, I think, $200 to $250. But it's if you need something that is going to be a little bit better than the AT2020, but you don't want to go all the way up to the RE320, AKG Perception 420 all day long, every day. Anytime something becomes possible in Linux, I personally believe that we should jump right on it. Contrary to popular belief, video editing in Linux is a very doable thing. My nonlinear editor of choice is Lightworks. I've worked with it for a long time, basically since it came out for Linux, and I had a little bit of trouble at first, and the learning curve is a little steep, but once I kind of got my brain wrapped around how they wanted me to do things, I find it to be very usable. One thing that's different about Lightworks from any other non-linear editor is that the layout is totally customizable. So, for example, with Adobe Premiere and Final Cut Pro, you essentially have a stock layout. You can make minor changes to it, but really, the way it's set up is the way it's set up. With Lightworks, I can move these windows, add or subtract them. Like, let's say I want to preview 3 videos at the same time. I can have 3 preview windows open. I prefer to have one preview window, and then I prefer to have that mirrored onto a dedicated display, so I can always look over and see what my project looks like. I have my project timeline out over here, and then my cutting window up over here, and then I like to have my bin window over there to keep track of all of my clips. Now, working with data is really, really important when you're dealing with video. Obviously, video files are very large, and so storing them and working with them takes a little bit of extra thought. So I really like this BFG card reader. It's a really hefty card reader, so it sits on the desk and it doesn't move, and I can stick a memory card in, I can copy my data off, and I can pull the memory card back out, and the card reader really doesn't move all that much. Once the video files are copied, they're copied onto a dedicated RAID 0 that is on the workstation. The workstation has, I think, 16 terabytes of storage in it and then 32 gigs of RAM, which makes it really, really, really easy to work with all sorts of different editing formats, including those that are not terribly editor-friendly, like AVCHD. I have a keyboard that is produced by Editshare that has all of the key commands, editing commands, right on the keyboard, so I can access those very quickly without having to look or remember shortcuts. That's really useful if I need to do an action that isn't real common, where ordinarily I would have to go Google to find out what the key command is. To do that, I can just look down, hit the button, and it's done. Now, anyone that knows me knows I'm a huge fan of trackballs. I don't think I have a workstation that's not using. I have one workstation that's not using a trackball. All the rest of them are all Logitech trackballs. But even though I have a trackball, this thing has been remarkably useful. Now, this I did not pay a dime for. I did not pick it out. I did not order it. It automatically showed up on my doorstep, and all I did to do that was become a Patreon for Tech Talk Today. And then I get this amazing cool mouse pad, which even though, like I said, I don't really need a mouse pad, the palm rest is remarkably comfortable, and I use it all the time. Now, once the video files have been edited, I like to keep a copy of the project files and the original video files. Now, with an editor like Lightworks, it's non-destructive, so it doesn't actually modify the original video clip. So all I have to do is save the project file, which is just a couple of megs, and then back up the actual video footage. Some people will delete the video footage right when they're done with it. I keep it. I keep it all just in case I ever want to go back or pull a clip from it or whatnot. And to do that, I have designed this this dock that was originally made to house a Blu-ray drive with USB 3.0, and I fitted it with a quick caddy, so I can pull this out. And this is VidPro 220. So this this is the 20th 2 terabyte drive that I filled with video footage, and now obviously I've kind of switched to 4 terabytes, but. You fill video footage very, very quickly. So that that allows me to very easily go back, especially if I need to pull up an old project. It makes it really easy to get to it. I can go back over and copy that footage back over. Now, it's real important. You would never want to edit off of a USB device. I suppose you probably could, but it's really not a good idea. You really want to work with local storage as much as possible. Now, once that drive comes out, once it's filled, it gets put into a case like this, and then the case gets labeled with the date and the projects that are on it, and then it goes into a plastic storage bin, and then that goes into a fireproof safe, and that's how I keep the what I would call archived video footage. And then if I ever need a project, I have a spreadsheet. I can go back, look up the project name, find the original source files, pull the hard drive out, stick it in here, copy them back over, and work with them as if they just came off the camera. So for me, for my workflow, works really, really well. And don't let anyone tell you can't edit video on Linux. You can totally edit video on Linux. I do it all the time. I have a lot of fun doing it. And once you get your head wrapped around Lightworks, works really, really well. Now, for the actual editing, in addition to having dedicated displays, a dedicated keyboard, and a dedicated trackball, I also have Cinema Ribbon speakers. Those are actually a gift from my dad. They're made by a company called Sunfire, which is actually based out of Seattle, I believe. And they have excellent reproduction of high-fidelity sound. Sounds really, really sharp, really, really clear. Those are connected to a audio amplifier that is down here. This is just a generic receiver, Yamaha receiver, and that is taking a digital signal from the workstation, and then I get all of my audio, so I can hear the audio as if I were in a theater environment. This is just a small rack, and I have a couple other things. I have a VHS player that I can pull video in from VHS, although I can't even remember the last time I've done that. It's been so long. So that's kind of an overview of what editing video on Linux looks like, as well as what live production from the studio looks like. Now, the mobile setup is very, very similar to that. Instead of the Wild Dog, I'm just using a laptop, but I'm still using that HDMI capture card. The only other difference, I guess, is that I'm pulling the audio directly from the camera, not through an external audio interface. Now, it's important to remember that video, once it hits that Wild Dog, is being encoded in Jitsy and sent back to you, Chris, so maybe you can talk about what happens when that video comes in to JB1 and how it actually gets sent out over the internet.
Yeah, in fact, I would even start with, we first tried something like Skype and Hangouts, but we weren't satisfied with the quality. There seems to be like issues with Skype under Linux every other release. And Hangouts, while good, also I have issues with the audio quality of Hangouts. It's okay, but I wish it could be a lot better than it is. And we do use Hangouts for a lot of our interviews, and we use Skype for some of our other shows and some of our other interviews, but we really wanted something that was open source and that ran under Linux. And so we initially started working with Jitsy. Now, there's a couple of different iterations of Jitsy. There is the web version, which works quite well. The Linux Gamecast, they do their production under Linux. You should check their show out, especially if you want to see end-to-end Linux production. And they'd use the web version of Jitsy, and it works well for them. And it's all web-based. You've seen it. It's very much like Hangouts, but you can run it on your own private instance. That was good, but that wasn't quite what we wanted, because for production purposes, we wanted to be able to say, use the Opus codec, set it to 128 kilobits, use H.264 for the video, set it to a megabyte, make sure that the video is 16 by 9, make sure that the video is 1280 by 720. We want to be able to set all of those settings and have them stay for every single call. That's what Jitsy on the desktop allowed us to do, software side, but it requires some other components to be set up, which was really where the troubleshooting came in. And in fact, Noah, I know you spent a lot of time working on making sure to get the Jitsy server-side components set up, so that way we could just pick up and make calls to each other. Do you want to touch a little bit on what you had to set up for us to be able to do what we're doing right now?
So basically, I had a lot of stuff to get done in a given week, and we tried to get a couple different solutions like Hangouts, and we tried Jitsy and it didn't work. We tried Hangouts and Skype, and neither of those working real well. And then I think something was mentioned about perhaps using Windows with Skype, and instantaneously.
Yeah, then we're like, that's no good. That's no good.
So I literally call my office staff and I'm like, I want nothing planned for Monday and Tuesday. I have to work on something, and I worked all day Sunday after that day that we were trying to test things out, and then I worked on Monday and Tuesday. And the trick to getting Jitsy to work, and I don't know why this is, you have to have ICE and you have to use a turn server. You have to specify a turn server in order to get it to broker that connection through ICE. And you have to use ICE. You can't not use ICE because for whatever reason, in the infinite wisdom of the Jitsy designers, they did not give us a way to specify a socket. I can't just put in an IP address and a port. And so you have to set up a turn server, and so we're using OpenFire for the server that's running on a DigitalOcean droplet. Which again, I mean, the importance of being able to do that on the fly can't be overstated. I mean, you're on the air and you were getting frustrated because it wasn't working, and I wanted to get an XMPP server up right now. So DigitalOcean.com, I click it, 45 seconds, I have a server to go. I installed OpenFire, it took me about 5 minutes, but then we had that brokering problem. That took the biggest thing was actually setting up. If I had it to do over again, I could do it in 15 minutes. But it took 3 days to figure out that I had to specify a turn server to get that to work. And once you set up a turn server, once you set up the or OpenFire with a turn plugin, connects every time. And Jitsy is still a finicky piece of software, and I think that's because it's built on a Java stack. So every once, like for instance, basically the rule of thumb I go by is I will only leave it open unused for about 30 seconds. And if I haven't used it, I'll just close it because it'll crash. But once we've established a connection, it's rock solid. I mean, we've done 4 or 5 episodes. We did 5 hours of streaming at scale, and we did that all through Jitsy, and it held up like a champ. So while it's in use, it's fine. While it's dormant, I wouldn't give it more than 5 minutes.
I have found I have to be kind of precarious, and I'm using it in conjunction with that same HDMI capture device that you showed off, the Magwell X100D USB. This is just a simple USB. It takes in HDMI on one side, USB 3.0 on the other side. Linux just sees it as a Linux video device, and any software like Skype or Hangouts or Jitsy that detects Linux video devices, like a webcam or anything, will detect this, and it just shows up as a webcam source, and you have 1080p in of anything you're putting in there, and that's what I send Noah back program feed with.
Yeah, and then the concept, like the Blackmagic, if you look at their website, and we got pieces of feedback in, people will say, well, Blackmagic, they technically support Linux. If you call their support, because I bought it, you call their support, they'll say, yeah, just install the latest distro of Ubuntu 10.04, and then we have a driver package that you can install and spend 5 hours doing that, and then you can configure this stupid little software, which takes another 2 hours.
Don't ever update the kernel from the stock one that came on the ISO.
Right. That to me, that is not a Linux solution. That's totally not acceptable. It needs to be able to work with Linux. And the way that device works is it shows up as a video for Linux device. So it is identical to like you said, if you had a C920 webcam, it's going to show up the exact same way. And so you can interface it. I just get a dev/video 0 device, just like I would on anywhere else in Linux. And because of that, things like Snowmix will pick it up perfectly. I don't have to wonder, is Snowmix going to talk to the proprietary Blackmagic? No, I don't worry about that. If it works with any video device with Linux, then I know that this HDMI capture card is going to work. So I bought a ton of them. I love them.
Yeah, so right now this call's been going for 2 hours and 36 minutes without a hiccup. So before we get off VoIP calls altogether, though, I'll give a plug for Linux.com. I have it linked in the show notes. A roundup of other Linux native VoIP clients. If Jitsy doesn't do it for you, he covers a few other ones like Ikagia and a few others that you probably heard of. So Jack Wallen has a write-up at Linux.com that we have linked in the show notes.
The other thing we should talk about just briefly is FFmpeg streaming. So everyone is familiar, at least most people are probably familiar with FFmpeg's ability to convert from one file to the other. But what you might not be familiar with is I can issue a streaming command, and it will take everything from a given video source and a given audio source. So I might have a USB audio interface, and I might have my Magwell HDMI capture device, and I can send those over an FFmpeg stream. And again, I can specify the video, the frame rate, the size, all that stuff, and then I can send it to something like Alan's Scale Engine, and then you can pull it back down. And that's a great way to get remote feeds if you don't want somebody to have to be at the studio to receive it. Because it can all be initiated from the laptop.
Now, so when you get to I'll come back to video switching in a minute. One thing before we go too far, because right now, this like with the Jitsy call, the Jitsy client could actually be used for voice podcasts too. It doesn't have to be used for video podcasts, right? So a lot of the stuff we've covered actually applies to both video and audio podcast production at different scales, conference production, something for your own company that you just want to put out. That's getting more and more common. But there's something that both Noah and I recommend quite a bit when you're taking in audio into your Linux box is bring it in through some USB devices, like the PreSonus is a great one. This PreSonus audio box or M Audio. USB device, something like that. Noah, you use PreSonus, as you showed it there in the video.
Yep, I have both the M-Box, the M-Audio, and both of those are in the show notes. The M-Audio and the PreSonus. I think I have really, really sensitive ears. I can really tell if between a good capture device and a bad one. And I think that the PreSonus sounds a little bit sweeter. It's a little bit truer, especially if you pair it with a good Mackie mixer. The Mackie has really, really good hot inputs. And if you pair that, the PreSonus sounds just a little bit better. It's also a little bit more expensive. So you're going to pay about $30 more, but I think you get a little bit more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And it looks nicer in a rack because all the ports are in the front or the back.
Right.
Whereas on the M-Audio, it's the ports are on the top and the bottom.
And we have links to the microphones and audio. The hardware we've talked about is linked in the show notes. So if you guys saw that, and also if you saw some of Noah's walkthrough, of course, you can always play that back and see how he's using some of that stuff actually in production. What do you got there? Something cool.
The last thing, just because people like hardware, I should have grabbed this earlier, but I just wanted to pull this out. This is the Atmos Ninja.
Yeah.
And essentially what it is it is a tiny hard drive based, so you put a hard drive in here, and then there's HDMI ports, and you can record in ProRes. You can do ProRes, you can do DV Cam, and essentially what it allows you to do is this, there's a tripod mount on the bottom, and you can mount this onto onto the camera itself, and then put a hard drive in there, and then record all of the stuff. And I know that you really like having video footage provided to you in ProRes because you don't have to transcode
This is such a huge. If I could tell you anything, if you're going to do production under Linux, that would make it so much easier is if you bring in the stuff in a format that your editor works with to begin with, you will save so much frustration and time. A lot of you guys that have your editors crashing on you or being slow and laggy or not being able to preview the frames right, it's because you're not using the right video codec in your editor. And the video editor is chugging to get through that. And so if you can bring that stuff in the right original source, so for some editors that's ProRes, for others it's DV Cam or whatever it might be, you will save yourself so much time and hassle, and you will make your editor, the program, OpenShot, Lightworks, Final Cut, Premiere, Vegas, whatever it is, you will make Kdenlive. It will run better if it is in a good codec, and you will lose less projects. You will transcode and encode faster. You will export the file faster. It's an expensive piece of gear, and it means one more thing you got to bring with you on every trip. But it saves so much time in the post-production process, and specifically under Linux, where there isn't a great suite of transcoding tools outside of FFmpeg. So if you get something in a weird format, you can really be in a bind. Specifically editing under Linux, it has made such a huge difference.
And to your point, I would argue that you and I are both, we share a belief that transcoding should never be done. It really,
you can avoid it.
Video in its original form because you're always going to lose something. And once you do it enough times, even small amounts of loss, you'll begin to notice them. To your point of using an editor-friendly format, I would go so far as to say that using an editor-friendly format is so important that I would transcode AVC video files because the editor will work so hard to get through them. I'd rather take the quality hit and work in ProRes or DV Cam than, and Lightworks will do both natively. I think you get DV Cam for free, you have to pay for ProRes. But it's so important and it makes such a difference in editing workflow. So for example, if you try and put AVC in, even small things like the audio and the video won't be exactly synced up in the preview, which makes it difficult to find where to make cuts and stuff. So it just, if that's what you're doing, I would go so far as just to say take the quality hit and transcode because it'll make that big of a difference.
Yeah. All right, so enough about video. Let's just talk a little about audio production. This is my sweet spot under Linux, and I do this every single week for the Unfiltered show. And a tool I use is Oaken Audio. We've talked about it before on the show. We've talked about it on Linux Unplugged. It's free, but it is not open. It is a fast, powerful audio editor, and one of the things I love about it is it's fully capable of editing audio clips and video clips as audio clips. So I don't know if I have it installed on this rig. I probably don't because I don't really edit out in the studio very often. Yeah, I don't. But one of the things I love about it is you can pull in, say, like a YouTube MP4 file that you've downloaded or a video clip from your favorite movie. Like maybe you want to go get Mr. Spock saying, I have been and always shall be your friend or something like that. You drag the file into Oaken Audio, and then you can just go select out the audio and save it out to a new file instantaneously. It's quick, it's clean, it's a great audio editor. If you're doing just basic podcasting, it's all you need. Now, you're going to need to also collaborate. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. If you're just getting started now, I highly recommend you just start with OwnCloud. Don't get hooked on the Google Docs sauce like I did, my friends. Start with OwnCloud. I've integrated OwnCloud into my workflow a lot more. So, for example, Clips I edit now sync through OwnCloud. Show notes that I want to write only in pure text, I sync through OwnCloud, and then I can send them out to other people and they get them in text. OwnCloud is a great back-end tool that I don't really use in this sense as a traditional like management, contact management, data management. I'm more using it as a show asset synchronization platform. How about that for a buzzword? I synchronize my artwork, I synchronize the clips, I synchronize all of the standard assets that I need to have for every single show. So a perfect example of that would be Linux Unplugged. Linux Unplugged always has to have certain sound bites that I play for every single show. So in OwnCloud, I have this soundboard folder clipped, and I have an synced, and I have this unplugged folder, and in here I have all of the sound clips that go with your average Linux Unplugged episode. They're ready to go no matter what computer I sit down at. So I could fire.
It's wasted effort.
I could fire off Richard Stallman saying it's wasted effort, or maybe if the value in something is rather negative.
And the value of this is negative.
I have those clips on any computer I want because they're syncing via OwnCloud. So Oaken Audio and OwnCloud are two pieces of software I use to do a lot of my audio management and editing. They work really good because I can just save right to the file system. I use the OwnCloud sync client to then send it off to my OwnCloud server. And the best part is I can open up the OwnCloud instance and just play it in the browser if I just need to do something really quick or pull something out really fast to show somebody. And it also makes a really nice way for me to send a specific clip to a person. I can just share a link in OwnCloud. So I like that a lot for audio production. There's other honorable mentions like Ardour and Audacity. I don't like those applications as much, but they're fine. And of course, Noah already mentioned it, but FFmpeg, the real powerhouse to doing a lot of this stuff. Even when we encode MP3s, we use FFmpeg. So that's some of the software side we use for managing that kind of stuff. We're still in the studio because if we only did the Linux Action Show, I would probably have a Linux or a hardware-based setup. But because we do 12 other shows, I have Wirecast running on a Mac Pro that does the live switching. So like when I switch to Noah's face or this shot right here, for example, is being composited by Wirecast. But we're kind of at a point now where we want to kind of change things up a little bit. We want to move off the Wirecast sauce down the road. So one of the things I'd like to ask the audience to help us out with production a little bit is we're stuck right now with this virtual set, and neither one of us really like this virtual set. It's fine, not really. It gets the job done. But what we'd really like is something that's more real, something more like this. This is my KDE desktop I took like 2 years ago. I screenshotted it, and then I used GIMP to take out the bash windows, and I made them transparent, and now this is a PNG overlay. It works. It's not exactly great, though. I would love if anybody in the audience wanted to create us shots that would accommodate the type of shots we have on the Linux Action Show. I wouldn't even mind something that sort of takes back the curtain and drops the green screen altogether. Noah and I have kind of been talking about just sort of embracing the fact that we're in a studio, don't need a green screen, and let it all hang out. What do you think, Noah?
I think that the green screen it's a larger issue. I think you know what I'm going to say.
What? Because the green screen needs Wirecast.
Right, and the Wirecast needs
the Mac. Right.
The Mac. Yeah. So if we can eliminate, and I'm one of those people that I'm a very pragmatic, practical person. So it's not that I don't understand. And if my choices were, should the Linux Action Show exist on a Mac or not exist at all, I will pay for the Mac 5 times over. I'll donate every Mac you need to make the show happen, right? But when we reach a point, and we're just now getting there, I don't even know if we're quite there yet, but we're getting there. The tools, the ground has been laid, I think, to be able to do the production on Linux. And so it'll be fun to kind of see what things we can swap out and see how much of Linux. Like, so for example, one thing that made me really happy was the first time I saw the studio was the feed that goes out all day, that plays all day, every day. That's a Linux machine. That's Linux Mate, or Ubuntu Mate, with VLC playing, and that's what you're seeing. So in that sense, that the Wirecast machine at that point is simply just pulling in a feed and sending it out over RTMP, which actually could be being done in VLC.
Yeah, if we dropped the need for green screen compositing and a few other things, it is not just as black and white as that, but that is a major piece.
Right.
Is the compositing, and so that's why I was going to say, like, if somebody out in the audience had an idea of something they could design for us that we could use that would work with the studio. I could set up a couple cameras in here, and this. I'm just using what I'm showing right now as an example because this isn't a composited shot. These are real shots. We could take something like this and just be in the studio and use the studio as the set. But honestly, it's beyond my design limits. I've tried to come up with different stuff. All I end up back is this virtual set. And it's not what's keeping us in Wirecast, but until this part is resolved, we can't move away from Wirecast. So it's kind of the next thing that we need.
Yep. Right, and that's exactly what I was going. That's exactly what I was going along with the thought of the groundwork has been laid. It's not that we make one change and all of a sudden now we can do the entire thing on Linux. But you have to tackle things one at a time and make sure that the changes are that they work and that it's reliable, and also that you don't lose quality. And then once you can do that, and once you can change out all the little pieces, then you can pull out the rug out from under you and make a big switch. And it's kind of like the same way you switch somebody from Windows to Linux. You start them on OpenOffice and Firefox and all the things are going to work fine in Linux, and then eventually you pull the rug out from under them and they don't even notice. That's kind of what
that's what we've been doing here. Like when we first moved in with the back end encoding, all the transcoding, we never even put that on a Mac. You put that on Linux immediately, and then we've slowly been moving that in, and it all kind of starts to circle around that Wirecast machine. And then once you do that, you can start to say, okay, well, this is the list of stuff that does, and if we can check this list off, then we're in a much better spot. And now it leaves us in a spot like when we're remote, we can do all Linux setups and all Linux broadcasts, and all of this stuff here is all Linux here at the table. That's really awesome, and so it's pretty cool. And I think if at some point, if I had in the past decided not to go video, we probably would have been able to stay Linux, probably even at that point too, because we wouldn't worry about camera switching and things like that. But yeah. Now, I want to point out the show notes. Noah and I put a ton of links to software and hardware in the show notes that we have personally owned and tried and can verify it works really well. The microphones we use, the whole range of microphones Noah listed, from sort of the cheaper ones to the more expensive ones, the software we like a lot. It's all laid out there, Noah. What else? Are we forgetting anything we wanted to cover in the production episode?
No, just one more plug that if somebody can work on that, make some sort of a PNG that we could use, that would be great.
Lots of them.
And then
we're going to need lots of
frames. I think we're still
for like every shot.
Right. Well, yeah. Right. Yeah. The other thing that will be super cool, and again, this is still kind of in the planning stages, but it seems like it's going in the right direction. Is now the groundwork has been not only laid but tested for doing all Linux production when we're off-site. So where the green screen definitely doesn't matter, and where we can cheat on camera switching, because camera switching isn't so important, because essentially you're doing Yeah, well, in post it's super easy. You just bring a couple cameras, but we can deal with just with as little as 2 or 3 camera shots. And if we can get that working, it is entirely possible that maybe at LinuxFest Northwest this year you might see a System 76 Wild Dog performance.
And I think you'll also hear as we roll those as we make little milestones like that, we'll talk about it on the show and tell you how we did it.
Yeah.
And I think now it's at the point where you could do it all under Linux, especially if you had a little extra time and focus.
Right.
Where it gets a little harder is
the
where
real problem, right?
Yeah, it gets a little harder when you want to produce like a lot of things every single day and get them out within a couple of hours. That gets a little more complicated, but it's getting closer. It's pretty exciting, and things like Snow Mix and others will help quite a bit. Now, there are a few big components we left out. Like, we didn't get too specific on which mixer you might want to use. I love Mackie mixers. Noah, what was your big one there you have there? Was that a Mackie or what's that?
It's a Mackie. It's a CFX16. Mackie has industry leading mic input. So if you want really sweet sounding audio, you run that through a Mackie mixer. It'll sound really great.
There's a lot of different ways you can go. And Noah and I both are big fans of doing it in hardware whenever possible. I don't always follow that rule. Like here in the studio, my mixer is a software-based mixer. That's a unique scenario, again, because this is sort of a unique production setup. If you're not doing something at the scale we are, you have different requirements. And some of those like Maxi mixers are just some of the best. I have 2 of them. And I just refuse to get rid of them because I love them so much. I love them.
Right.
They're just amazing mixers. Like, I emotionally bonded to them.
And the more things you do in hardware, the better chance you're going to have of getting that to work in Linux, because essentially you have choke points. You bring the audio in Linux, you bring the video in Linux. And as long as those 2 components work, it doesn't matter what's beyond that, as long as they're all hardware-based. If the compressor and the gate and all that stuff is hardware-based, you don't have to worry about Linux compatibility. You just have to make sure it does really good at what it does.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, and I think you mentioned this, the hardware version is going to do it better than the software version. Most times. That's not always the case. So.
Yeah. Yeah, all right. So we'll probably touch on this again later in the year, but this is a good standing spot right here. And I think it does show you, like, the Jitsy connection, it's a little buggy, but I'd say we've now been able to surpass Skype in quality, all using open source software. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. You look good, and like we when we were testing it, like we were even doing things like walking around a room, and it was so clear that like Skype and Hangouts would start dropping frames, and like if Noah was walking around the room, we'd get like 20 frames per second, but Jitsy manages to hold 30 frames per second the entire time. We could probably even get it higher if we wanted.
Yeah, I walked around scale with it. And we were doing live coverage, and that it held its own. And that was Wi-Fi. That was on Wi-Fi.
Yep. Yeah, it's getting really good. It's been exciting over almost 8-9 years I've been doing this show to see it get to this point. It's been extremely long time coming. It's really annoying and frustrating, and it's still not quite there yet. But it's so close. And it could be for so many people. I'm a little jelly for people that are just starting out. I'm a little jelly because it's all there, especially if you're doing an audio podcast.
Yeah, and like you said, if you had the time where you can't disassemble your studio to try new things because it all has to work within the next 45 minutes. And so if you're at that point where you have even a week or two to plan and play with things, you could totally get this stuff working. I could have gotten SnowMix to work if I would have had more than 45 minutes to play with it.
Right.
I just don't have the time.
Yep. That's kind of where it's at now. It's if you think you can't do it under Linux, it probably just means you don't know how to do it under Linux, or the workflow is a lot different under Linux. I run into that a lot too. I often think it can't be done, and then what I've discovered is I have to rethink the way I do it, or maybe I rethink, and that sometimes even means the tools I use to get the job done. Like when I realized that I didn't always need an editor, that sometimes I could just use AvidMux, which seems obvious on the face of it, but when you live your life inside a video editor and then realize I don't need a video editor, it just took me rethinking the problem a little bit, and I realized how I could solve that under Linux and address a huge portion of my video editing without ever even needing to find a video editor I liked. So that was really exciting.
Yeah. You know how many things I do under VLC these days? That if you would have asked me back in the era of when I was using Windows, if you would have said, well, you can do that in a media player, I'd be like, no, you don't understand. I'm talking about the opposite side of it. I'm talking about streaming. I'm talking about generating. I'm talking about transcoding.
Yeah.
But VLC does all that.
Before I started doing this kind of stuff, I thought FFmpeg was like some buggy thing that did some stuff sometimes. And now it's like FFmpeg is like, I feel like I need a shrine for FFmpeg because it's such an amazing piece of software.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tools.
The problem is
like
because a lot of it's so command-based is that it's not even clear at the face of it all the extreme power that it has until you start digging into
hidden.
it.
It's hidden in there. And then there's tools like Handbrake that help you a little bit learn it, but all right, well, there you go. That's a ton of stuff for you guys to cover. I know we blasted through a lot of it. I encourage you, if you really want to do this, maybe replay this segment because there was a lot of good stuff. And the only reason I say that, you guys, is we have learned this stuff with blood, tears, and lots of money. We have seriously put so much time and effort into troubleshooting this stuff and making sure it runs with Linux. This is sort of the accumulation of all of these efforts over years and years. I hope you find it valuable. Go find the links in the show notes, and if you missed anything, watch it again. And you can always send in emails. We could do future follow-ups. You can go to go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click the contact link, and choose Linux Action Show from the drop-down to send questions in. Or there's also the feedback thread over on the subreddit linuxactionshow.reddit.com. But that concludes production under Linux. And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. And that means it's time for our emails. Noah and Jason writes in with our first email this week. And guess what? It kind of fits the topic. He says, hey guys, I see a bash window around the video conferencing that you do on the show. What the hell are you using? I'm so sick of Skype. Please tell me you got something better. No, you see that bash window right there? That's just a PNG. This is just me inserting an image into a bash window. I'm sorry. A lot of people ask, though. A lot of people ask about that. No, have you noticed how many people ask about that? A lot of people.
Yes. Yeah, we got it last week, actually, too.
Yeah, we get it every week. We get it every single week. All right, you want to read the next one from Levi?
Yeah, so Levi writes in and he goes, production gear on software. I started using Linux about 2 years ago and loved every minute of it. Then I found LAS, a.k.a. the best Linux show around. I have in the past year started recording the video for my audio for my church services. I've been editing the video in Blender, and while it's not ideal, it gets the job done. Then uploading to YouTube, but I'd like to be able to live stream. I just don't know where to begin with the task. I love your show, and I was wondering if you could tell me what gear and software you use for the live production. Now, I responded to Levi in a very detailed email and told him exactly how I'm doing the stuff in my studio, and to the best of my understanding, how you're doing stuff in your studio.
Cool.
But honestly, the entire episode answers that question.
Yes. Yeah, and something we didn't touch a lot on, but we gave it a quick mention. Open Broadcasters in beta right now. That's a good way to stream. FFmpeg, Noah mentioned that. There's a lot of ways to do it, to be honest with you. But hopefully after watching today's episode, you got a good picture of that. Justin writes in with a question about screen magnifiers. He says, I'm legally blind and I currently use a Mac due to the accessibility features of being the best on the platform. I want to move to Linux, but I'm held back by that small but important factor. I most likely will use GNOME Shell or Ubuntu or something based on Ubuntu. What suggestions might be made for screen magnifications? Did you find anything, Noah? And I'll watch the chat room.
I looked around and I gave a couple of suggestions. Essentially, Justin reached out to me on Facebook and said, I want to become a Linux user, but this is what's holding me back. And so I gave him my word that we would that I would pitch it to the community and we would see if we can try and come up with something. This is if anyone had a legitimate reason not to use Linux, I feel like that's it. If you can't see the screen and you can't get information off the screen, it makes it pretty difficult to use the operating system. So he says he's tried the very common ones, Orca, and the ones that you find with a quick Google search. So that's not doing it for him. But I'm hoping that somebody out there knows is also maybe using an accessibility tool and say this is what works for me. And if we could help him out, that would we'd have another Linux user.
Yeah, I know there are a few. I know like Compiz can also do this as like a Compiz plugin. Orca was what I was going to recommend though. So okay.
Yeah.
Compiz maybe, but yeah, I'm not quite sure. What I want to do is I want to punt to the audience. I'm seeing K-Speech in there as well, and K-Mag are also being mentioned. Maybe we can.
I have to believe there's somebody else out there that has a disability that has solved this problem already.
Oh, I feel like Kwin could just do this. I feel like Kwin has this built into it. So we got a feedback here. The Jitsy developers don't bite, and. Somebody noticed that in our attempt to use Jitsy instead of Google Hangouts, we were having some issues, and they suggested we contact the Jitsy devs and report the issues we have had. And they said, give it a try, and that was Canterton. And actually, we have had a little success chatting with the Jitsy folks. No, I don't know if you have any comments to add into this.
Essentially, I think that critique might be a little short-sighted in that we had problems the very first week, and ever since then, really, Jitsy has actually, I'd say it works 99.9% of the time, and the 0.1% of the time is so predictably failable that we can plan around it.
Yeah,
and honestly, restart before we do the show.
It's not that unusual when you have production where you introduce a new piece of software and then it takes a little while to work out all the kinks. Like that just kind of is the way it goes because they're complex.
But I'd say we're there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say we're there. I mean, this episode alone, I at no time I can always tell by my mental notes of I have to keep an eye on this or I have to think about that. I don't think about Jitsy. Once we establish the connection, I get a little worried right when I walk in the morning. But then once it's established, I don't think about it again.
Yeah.
I trust it's going to work.
Yeah.
And so far, it's been correct.
It's a 3-hour and 1-minute call so far with no hiccups. Maybe it could happen, but we have had some folks that have reached out from the Jitsy project who have been nice, and we've talked to them a little bit. Like one of the things here, I'll show. So here's Noah's screen, right? And if I unmaximize the Jitsy window, or I hang up on him. Well, I was going to show you that there's a big chin on it, but unfortunately, I just hung up on him instead. Sorry, no, I wasn't trying to hang up on you. Or I'll call him back. So, anyways, there's here I can show you while I do this. Right there. So you see, there's this large chin here on the Jitsy window here at the bottom where you have, which is actually kind of cool because you can see the levels that you're sending in real time, which I do like that. But what I don't like is that it never goes away. So even when I maximize the Jitsy window here, it never goes away. That chin is constantly there. So it's one of the things we said, like, hey, could we reach out to a Jitsy developer? Do you think they would be willing to maybe take a look at that? And it sounds like maybe that is something they're willing to take a look at. Sorry, no, I clicked
the close. The screw you button?
Yeah, I did, because I was trying to unmaximize the window. It hangs up real fast. It's nice, I tell you.
It does. Imagine what happens when you hit that red button.
Anyways, so that chin, other than that, but you know what, when we reached out and they were like, yeah, that might be something we could look at. So they actually have been really cool. And that's one of the other advantages of using open source in your meter production is if it's something you really depend on, there might be somebody's ear you could twist that would help you troubleshoot it a little bit.
I think he's actually in the chat room. It's SM that was what we were speaking with.
Yeah, maybe he does sometimes join us live, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so SM, if you're in there, howdy at you. No, is there anything you want to mention before we wrap up today?
No, that pretty much covers it. I'm excited to see what happens with production on Linux.
All right. Well, if you want to contact the show, go over to Jupiter Broadcasting, click the contact link, and choose a Linux Action Show from the dropdown. You can find Noah on Twitter. He's Colonel Linux, and I'm Chris LAS on Twitter. And you can also find us in the Linux Action Show subreddit over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. Great place to make this show better, give feedback, app picks, runs Linux. Hint, hint, hint. Anything like that would be great. Rotten Corpse real-time follow-up in the chat room says KDE's magnifier effects works perfectly, similar to OS 10. You do super plus and or equals to zoom and super plus minus to zoom out. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking of. So there you go. Thanks, Rotten Corpse. And thank you, everyone, for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. See you right back here next week. So how come it only does 360p? I want HD.
Dude, it's a camera that's built into my head. Give it some slack. Oh, yeah, you see? See yourself? See me? See me seeing you? Oh, yeah.
That is pretty neat. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty. Hey, Noah, I'm in your office. I'm in your office, Noah. Hey, Noah, I'm in your office. Hey, Noah. Hey, Noah, I'm in your office right now. That's cool. Hey, there's me and you.
Every time somebody connects, I get my head dings. It goes ding, and then I know somebody else is there. It's kind of creepy, actually.
Yeah, what's gonna be weird is, you know what we need to do is put like a cube. What's it called? Like cube walls around you, kind of give you like a sound box.
Oh yeah. I could do that. Yeah.
Boy, it's funny how much that microphone's in our face, huh?
Yeah. Well,
you forget.
There.
You forget.
There.
Yeah.
My filler content, which is now turned into a time wasting content, is all right. This is getting annoying now. It's getting hot.
Yeah. All right.
It's getting really hot, actually.
That's what she said? No wonder why you have electrical noise. Jeez Louise.
Because I have a computer on my head.
No, because all those wires right there. Look at that wire right there. Jeez. Now you're looking. I made you look. Oh, you killed it. It died. Oh, it died.
What? Oh, sorry. Was I not supposed to?
No, that's fine. That's fine. That was fun.
I thought we should go back to doing a show.
I like peeking in on you. Okay, all right. Let's do a show.
There's only one answer, Chris. You know what the answer is? I'll tell you the answer. Here's the answer. You ready for the answer? Here's the answer. The answer is we'll just have to do a review on tiling window managers.
Yeah, I suppose.
You say that with such enthusiasm. I can see the spirit.
I just don't really want. See, the thing is here's why we've never done it. I got a lot of shit to do, and I cannot afford to slow myself down for a week to try out a desktop that I'm not going to like to begin with. So I'm going to go into it already kind of pissed off that I'm doing it, and so I'm not going to come out of it with a good review. So I just don't bother, because if anything if anything slows me down at all, it's already the review's going to be bad, right? Because it's like I don't have time for that. So what I do know is that Gnome works really well, and it's the fastest desktop out of any desktop I've used in the last 20 years.
Is that what you said the first time you used it?
No, it's taken me a long time to get to there, and so now I'm happy with it. I don't really, it took me about a half a year to move to Gnome 3. It really did. It took me about 6 months to really move in, and now that I'm here and I'm productive, I don't really feel like going anywhere else. Like I feel like out of all these years when I was distro hopping and trying out different desktops, I was constantly in the search of the perfect desktop, and now I've gotten there. And now why after all these years, why fight it? It's so nice to just finally have a desktop that I just truly love.
Because it ends in one of two ways. Either you find out that there's a more productive way to get your stuff done, or you find out that you were in fact using the best choice to begin with. But saying something like I already know that I'm not going to like it anyway, it's like saying let's hang him. No, let's give him a fair trial and then hang him. Right? You have to go into it with the idea that there's at least the possibility exists that you might come away liking it, and then you can at least give it kind of an idea.
Well, so here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, as you would say. I've tried them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this would be great if computers weren't as amazing as they were. I would really like to have this, but computers are actually amazing, so I don't need to have this. I don't know. To me, it felt like...
and that is my argument against tiling window managers. My argument against tiling window managers is it doesn't feel like a modern desktop. If I were to buy a brand new spanking Ultrabook and put a tiling window manager on it, I wouldn't feel like I'm having it as amazing as an experience.
Yeah.
It wouldn't look as beautiful and pretty to me
I'll tell you,
as Gnome or something. That is my argument.
Here's two use cases I feel like are totally legitimate for tiling window managers, like two types of user bases. Number one, like somebody who has kind of like yourself has a lot of monitor setups and they're always doing SSH terminals and they pretty much just live in the terminal and a web browser and maybe like LibreOffice, like really like 3 or 4 apps. That's all they ever do. They're not doing any kind of media production. They're just living in that environment. They have this super rock solid Debian stable workstation that's been running like that for 5 years. Oh, hardly ever reboots, persistent SSH connections. It's awesome. Okay, that's user number 1 for Tiling Window Manager. User number 2, and that person I picture, by the way, is probably anywhere between their mid-30s and up. So maybe like all the way up to like near retirement age, been working in the industry for a really long time, right? That's that user. Okay? Then the second user base for Tiling Window Managers is anybody between like the ages of 8 years old and like 25-ish, 24-ish, people who didn't live during the period of time where they would actually have to take like wires and jam it into the back of their televisions and like screw in the connectors so that way they could barely get their cartridge-based computer to do some piece of shit game. Those people, the people that didn't live through that, they're all about the Tiling Window Managers. Oh, how fun are computers? They're so quaint. Yeah, people that went through that, that's BS. We don't want to do that anymore. We spent decades like that. We've moved beyond that. Huh? Yeah, another good example. Well, if you live in VI or Emacs, if you're always living in the terminal, have at it.
I feel like your impression or your take on Tiling Window Managers are they're only good for text-based things. So, for example, like web browser and email. That's a huge thing, is to have your web browser and your email, so I can keep an eye on my email, and I fire off a couple emails, and I go back to my web browsing. Or one of the things I was doing that was super, super nice was I've always wanted a way to make Firefox transparent, so that I can have a movie and full screen it in VLC, and then have Firefox over and be browsing and doing stuff on Firefox while watching a movie behind it. Never been able to get it to work, and don't say AeroFox or whatever the plugin, because it doesn't work. But if the nice thing about the Tiling Window Manager was I had Chrome running, I was watching Netflix on a very top little bar, and then right below that I had my terminal. I was doing my work, and right below that I had my email, and then right below that I had Firefox, and I was able to keep an eye on 3 different windows on my laptop.
You know what I would like to be able to do?
How are you going to do that on a regular desktop?